it, even though we've already had so many good times. Okay, so who the Kings would keep? Chris, you were reading some, I guess, other details for what would happen in an expansion draft and who would be available.
Yeah, shout out Keith Smith, who's just ridiculously talented at this kind of stuff. He wrote an article for Spotrac last year where it pretty much details every single aspect of what an expansion draft would possibly be. And he writes that essentially if there were to be an expansion draft, it would take place in between the end of the NBA Finals and before the actual NBA draft happens. You get to protect the following. This is the criteria for the players that you are allowed to protect. Players under contract, players who are restricted free agents. You have the ability to protect restricted free agents, and you can protect players who have a team or player option for the following season. You are not allowed to protect players who are unrestricted free agents. So I'm trying to, just whatever. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. You obviously can't
way to lock them down.
Yeah, you can't take our guy, even though we don't have any ownership of him. So essentially they have to be under some form of contract in order for you to protect them. Each team can protect up to 8 players, but you can choose to protect less for whatever reason if you so choose. At least one of the players that you choose has to be under contract, so you cannot just go a ton of people who are restricted or tons of people who have a player option or anything like that. It has to be at least one player of your protected players that are actually signed to a contract. And the player status is based on the day of the draft. So that pertains more to players with team or player options. You have to make sure that those are still active the day of the draft. And so with all that being said, we now move on to who the Kings would protect in their in this theoretical, hypothetical NBA expansion draft. And again, you can save up to 8 players. And this all stemmed because yesterday at pretty much around this time, we had a texter say, I'm starting to grow increasingly worried that the Kings would lose Keegan Murray in an expansion draft. And let me tell you, ladies and gentlemen, for everybody out there listening on this wonderful radio station, there is a 0% chance that the Kings are losing Keegan Murray via expansion draft unless expansion happens in 15 years and Keegan Murray is an old veteran at that point. Because, with the 8 players, there's just no way Keegan is even on the verge of making the cut. So let's start with Keegan on the list because he's, especially right now, I would say top 3 protected players. Or should we even do that? Should we add who is the biggest priority for them to save? Or is
that's what I only want to do
7 and 8, right? You probably want to do more so who's on the chopping block.
I want to do who's on the chopping block, and then I want to cut down the number.
That's fair.
Which is essentially what you're saying.
Yes. Because number we'll just do the what feels to me as the obvious 8 and the obvious out. So the 8 that I believe the Kings would save and not think twice about it. Keegan Murray, De'Aaron Fox, Malik Monk, Domantas Sabonis, DeMar DeRozan, Devin Carter, Keon Ellis, and Kevin Huerter. Those are my 8. Leaving out Trey Lyles, Alex Len, Colby Jones, Jalen McDaniels, Jordan McLaughlin, Isaac Jones, and Isaiah Crawford. None of those guys really scream. I know some people might, why are you keeping Kevin? Kevin Huerter has more value to me than all of those other. I think Colby, maybe, but even then, I don't think they're that high on Colby right now.
Somebody out there is going to say why Trey Lyles over Kevin is crazy. I know somebody will say that.
It's not crazy at all.
But
Kevin Huerter's a starter and has been a starter. And
just
been a bench player.
There's Kevin Huerter, and then it turns into who do you think Devin Carter will be better than Colby Jones? And I think everybody's going to say yes.
That's the 13th pick versus second rounder. I would hope so, especially if that happens.
Where would Colby go in this draft though, or where would he
in the expansion draft?
No.
in this
past draft, higher,
but not 13.
So really the only question marks would be Trey Lyles or Colby Jones. And to your point, It's Kevin Huerter. Nobody is going to out Keon Ellis. And it's either somebody would question Kevin Huerter and Devin Carter, but I don't.
You can make the salary argument for Kevin, unprotect him, and then you just get to move off of his contract. But I don't think his contract's terrible.
So let's have some more fun here.
Let's do it.
Now let's cut it to what? 4?
4?
No, well, you have to cut it to 3. That's how you make it fun. Because obviously I still think we know who the 4 is. So now you have to cut it to 3.
I think it's De'Aaron. I think it's Keegan. And it's probably Sabonis, I would guess. Malik's a 6 man. You can replace that. DeMar's 30, whatever years old. Keon is a fun player, but he's not more important than Keegan. He's definitely not more important than Fox and Sabonis.
No. The question is DeRozan. The question is that 5 between Keegan, Fox, Monk, Sabonis, and DeRozan. That's the question. Who out of that 3? So you're going with basically the classic Keegan, Fox, and Sabonis.
Yeah, I don't know. I can't think of an argument for anyone else.
And when they're gone, you obviously lose their contract, so you would be able to bag somebody out, I'm assuming.
That I'm not super familiar with. I would assume so. I would assume that then comes off your cap, and then I would assume that it just kind of becomes free money. But we haven't been in that situation since 2004, so I'm not super familiar.
Yeah, the Soul Shine Band on Sack Chat says, I would take Keon, Carter, and Lyles over Huerter.
So you would just take Lyles over Huerter?
Yeah, really, Lyles over Huerter.
I don't see why you would do that. I think Trey is fine. But I think Trey is way more replaceable than Kevin Huerter.
If anything, the fact that it's even a question after how poorly Kevin played,
yes, that
based on how well he played 2 years ago, I just don't see how you can take Trey.
Yeah,
not over Kevin,
unless you're just thinking too much about guard. Oh, the Kings have too many guards, and this is an easy way to get rid of a guard. But I would think that in an expansion draft, it's just about keeping talent. And I think the only argument in my eyes for why you would let go of Kevin is, again, to just get rid of his contract and have somebody else take that on, because maybe you say, oh yeah, Kevin Huerter's just a shooter and we're paying him $15-16 million a year. If somebody else wants to take that off our books, go ahead. We can find a shooter for much cheaper. But yeah, player for player, I just think Kevin Huerter is a better player and a little bit tougher to find than Trey Lyles. Trey's great. I love Trey. Still want to be commissioner of the Trey Bays, but
not anymore.
Yeah, Still,
is this fair to you? The expansion draft. I mean, really, the only good players you're going to get from this draft, or I should say, players that could move you, is from the Celtics.
Sure, yeah. I mean, that's how it is, though. I mean, you want these you don't want to have a Vegas Knights situation and have the expansion team win the title in the first year. Yeah. I mean, that's definitely not better. It's not a good way. Teams would definitely have a problem. I'm going to have a problem if my Sacramento Kings haven't sniffed the finals their entire existence, but we can only protect 6 guys. And so this new team gets to walk in with no history and just automatically walks into success. That doesn't seem fair to me at all. So I would much rather have an expansion team start from the bottom. They still get high draft picks. They can still figure it out. The Bobcats took Emeka Okafor. They just took the wrong guy. Like, I think it's just a matter of that you do get ways to build this thing, but you're not going to walk into a playoff situation as an expansion team. We just can't have that.
Yeah. It feels like a lot of players. Feels like 8 players. Feels like most rotations are only 8 players.
Well, some teams are in different situations. Like some teams the Kings are a little bit more defined in their ages. Some teams might say, yeah, we have a Marcus Smart, but we really want to make sure we keep a Jake LaRavia or something, like they might value somebody who is younger because they view their potential as better versus keeping the elder statesman who, might be a better player today and will definitely get picked by the expansion team. But yeah, I mean, there's a lot of different calculations. And I'm sure if we did this I'm definitely not going to do it for every team, but I'm sure you could draft a semi-decent team, especially with how deep the league is these days.
It's the young guns. It's a young team that hopefully you're basically drafting guys, for example, and I don't know if they would be available, but give me Reed Shepherd, Rob Dillon, you know what I mean? All these top picks that who knows if some of the Timberwolves might not be able to save Rob Dillingham. You know what I mean?
Though. They definitely, if you just draft a guy, he's definitely going to be on your save list.
That's why you get 8. It's a lot. That's a lot. All right, coming up next, you have Brandon Ayuk holding in, but somebody on the Niners is actually holding out. And let me tell you, it's a very important piece. We'll tell you who that is and what's going on when we get back. Stiles and Watkins, Sactown Sports.
Our first year as the radio home of the San Francisco 49ers.